This is the 2023 Toyota Tundra TRD Pro Hybrid version. A beast built to conquer the trails, tow with confidence and crush any terrain. But even the toughest trucks rely on clean, healthy fluids to keep that four-wheel drive system alive. If you own a 4x4, especially one with hybrid power, you need to see this. Neglecting your front and rear differentials or the transfer case can silently destroy your drivetrain and cost you thousands. Today I'm going to show you how to fully service all three major components: the front diff, the rear diff, the transfer case, the right way, using the right fluids and the right tools. I'll show you what to use, the torque specs, the common mistakes to avoid, and how to do it all on your own. This isn't just maintenance, it's protection for one of the most advanced drivetrains Toyota has ever built. So stick with me, your Tundra is going to thank you. Every mile, off-road and on, let's get to work. Before we get started on this project, we've got to get access to the front differential. We're going to start here and work our way towards the back. We need to remove this skid plate on here. This is the TRD factory skid plate. It's made out of aluminum. It's fairly heavy even though it's aluminum, but I want to show you a little trick on here to access this with one person. There's a couple of hooks on here that a couple of bolts in the front we can leave this cover hanging on, and then there's a hook back here that'll hang on. So we can actually take out a bunch of these bolts. There's 6 of them. And we're just going to loosen the 2 front bolts here. There's a little slotted portion of this cover that we can leave them hanging on. Then what we're just going to go ahead and slide this cover over to the side and then slide it forward, and the whole cover can come down. We'll put this off to the side. Now that we've got access here with this cover off, we can see the entire differential assembly for the front of the vehicle. Right here is our differential. We've got a drain plug and a fill plug up here near the side of the axle. This is all we need to get access to. We can go ahead and remove the fill plug. I like to take this fill plug out first. This way we can check the level and the condition of the fluid before we even get started. So I'll be using a 10mm Allen socket on my ratchet. We'll put it up in the hole here. I'm just going to pop that loose. And you should be able to remove this by hand. These are usually not very tight once you break them loose. Okay, now that we've got that out, I'm just going to stick a pinky in here and see what our level looks like and our fluid condition. Okay, we've got a good sample there. Our fluid looks really clean on this. This vehicle has almost 30,000 miles and it's just about due for its 30,000 mile service. We're going to service all the fluids. We're going to be putting some Motul synthetic gear oil in these differentials. So let's go ahead and get this drained. We're going to pull this bottom plug. Just make sure you have your bucket positioned where you want it. This will have probably quite a bit of flow coming out of it because the hole is so big. And I want to try to get it all in the bucket in one shot. There it goes. So guys, you can see how clean this fluid is. This is fantastic. Wasn't expecting to see it that clean. And a lot of times I like to inspect this magnet from the drain plug once we've got it out and see if there's any material on here. So you can see there's a buildup of some metal on here. That's what this magnet's on here for, is to capture that. It's not abnormal. We got a brand new differential on here. This is probably the first service on it at close to 30,000 miles, and we just want to see what's on there, but don't be nervous about it because that's probably just a little bit of break-in material anyway. You can use a rag with a bit of brake cleaner and just make sure you get this material off of this magnet. And try to get any off the threads as well after you wipe it down. It's not a bad idea just to spray it down a little bit. We're going to let this fluid drain just to a slow drip here. That should get most of it out. We're ready to install our new drain plug gasket. Make sure you wipe the mating surfaces off on those gaskets before you put it back in. The same thing up here. We don't want any debris in here. If you had a lot of mud and stuff up here, you definitely want to be extra careful. Get that cleaned up well. We got a nice little slow drip here, and we'll put this plug back in. Same as we took it out, it should run itself in by hand all the way, and then we'll just go ahead and torque it down. We're gonna go ahead and torque this now that we snugged that up. I'm gonna set my torque wrench to 29 foot-pounds. That's the spec on this drain plug. And we'll go ahead and lock it up. Okay. Now that we're ready to fill this differential up in the front, I want to just talk about a couple of tools, because what I generally use in the garage here is this tool by Mightyvac. It's designed to fill differentials, transfer cases, and transmission fluid. It comes with a whole set of adapters here. Some of them can actually screw into the transmission pans. Some of them have these angle fittings on them. They're all quick disconnect, and it's just a really handy tool to have when you're doing these on a daily basis. Now there's some other options for you to use, and I brought that out because we often use a tool like this as well sometimes. And this is just a giant suction syringe basically. So we can fill this thing up with gear oil, and then this hose can fit all the way up into that hole, and then we can just squeeze it in there, just force this rod will just push the fluid slowly into the differential. So a couple options you got there. These are not super cheap either. This is also made by Mightyvac, I believe. And if you want, I'll put some links in the comments below or in the description below. This way, if you're interested in any of these tools, I'll throw them in there, but there might be some cheaper alternatives for you. Sometimes you can just put a hose on your bottle and squeeze it, but it's just not real easy with differential oil. It's thick and it's hard to get it to move. So your choice on how you want to fill it. I'm just giving you a couple of options here. We're going to be using this Motul synthetic differential oil. This is 75W85. The owner's manual calls for Toyota gear oil 75W85, but we're going to give it an upgrade here with some synthetic for this model. So let's go ahead and fill this system up, and then we can pump it into the car. I'm actually just going to take this off for faster filling. So what I'm going to do is just remove this pump. I'm going to put 2 quarts in here. This differential really only takes, I think it's 1.1 quart roughly. So I'm going to put 2 in here. We're going to end up using some more of this oil for the rear differential anyway. But I'll go ahead and put a couple quarts in here to get us started for the front. This way you can see how it operates. Once we got our fluid in there, we're going to tighten this pump down. And this does have a little lever on here. This helps us control the flow. We can turn it off or turn it on. This tool's been through the mill here. It's got a ton of use on it. These fittings tend to leak a little bit, so I might cover this up with a rag while I'm doing the demonstration just to keep the fluid from dripping down my arm. But I just wanted to show it does have a valve on here to shut it off and turn it on. In addition, we can dump the pressure by pulling on this relief valve, and there's a pressure gauge on here. I usually like to pump this up until I can get it in the top of the green zone before the red. That usually gives me enough pressure in order to fill the system up. If we run low, we'll just continue to pump it a little bit. So I'll show you how that works. Let's do it. We want to keep this 5 millimeters below that hole. So 5 millimeters is not very much, maybe a little more than 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and then so what I'm going to do is pump it up till it starts to spill out a little bit, and then I'm just going to stick my finger in there and pump a little bit of extra fluid back out just to drop the level of hair. They just want room for expansion. When this gets hot, it'll fill up the rest of the way to the bottom of the hole as you're using the differential and it's getting warm. I'm going to start pumping this up to get some pressure in the system. The gauge is slowly rising. You can actually see a little bit of fluid starting to move here. I haven't opened the valve yet. What I want to do is I want to get my pressure up first. Oops. Make sure that's sealed all the way. We're pressurizing this container internally in the air pocket, and that's going to force the fluid up through the hose. So I'm just about to the bottom of the red zone on my gauge here. Should give me enough pressure to get a bunch of fluid in here. And then I'll just open this valve up, and we're going to let this flow. So this can be a little bit of a slow process, especially if you're using a thick oil like a gear oil, 75, 85 weight. It takes a little bit longer. It just doesn't flow as well as the transmission fluid does. That's normal. So just take your time and try to get that fluid in there until the levels comes up to the hole. All right, so now you can see it's slowly oozing out of here. And we're probably just about where we want to be. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to stick my finger in here and see where our level's at. Guys, you can see it's, now that I've got it filled up, it's really starting to stream out. So I'm going to let this thing run a minute, and I'm going to just take my finger and try to work a little bit of fluid so I get that level to drop down a couple of millimeters below the top of the drain plug. And this way, before we're done, we want to make sure there's not even a drip anymore. And that should set the level just about where you need it. All right, I've got our fill plug cleaned up. I'm going to throw our new gasket on here. And then we can go ahead and put this back in and torque it down just like we did the drain plug. All right, we're going to go ahead and torque this fill plug as well. All right, we're all finished with that front differential. We're just going to throw the cover back up. I'll show you how that hangs on its own, and then we can torque the bolts down. All right, I want to show you the easy way to put this cover up. Toyota did a real nice design on this, so it's one-man job if you can get under there. There's a hook here on the back of the cover. That's going to go in the frame rail right here. Okay, and then the bolts are going to hang in the front. So what we'll need to do, I'm going to turn this around. We're going to put the head of the bolt through the hole, and then we're going to slide it up on this slot and slide it over. It'll actually hang on there, and we want to catch the back in the hole while we're doing that. Let's give it a try. Right here. Put that hole lined up, and we slide it back and over. Now we haven't tightened anything, but the cover's hanging for us. Just be careful not to bang it. You don't want it to fall and hit you in the face or something, especially if you're laying on your back under here. But let's get a couple of the other bolts caught, and then we can snug everything down. All right, we're going to install the other four bolts now that we've got this cover hanging. Make sure when you guys are doing these covers that you're getting all the threads caught a couple of turns before you use any of your impact tools or you tighten anything up. You really don't want to cross thread these bolts because they all go into the frame. If you do some damage here, it's not an easy repair to repair the threads, and then you'll never be able to put your cover back up again. So, you know, some people, they kind of rush, they put the socket on the end of their gun and then they just zip it in. I wouldn't recommend you do that. If you make a mistake, it's going to be a costly one. I'm going to go ahead and tighten up these bolts. I'm going to start in the middle first. I'm going to work my way to the outside. And then the outside and the front. Okay, now that we finished the front, we're working our way to the rear differential. This is a solid axle rear end. It's not independent rear suspension. And this is the pumpkin here. This is the differential. It's the setup that has the ring gear, the pinion gear, differential components as far as side gears and all the rest of the stuff's involved in there. Before I get started, actually, I want to show you, I've got another rear end part on a Toyota 4Runner. It's all the parts. You can see the internals on it. Let's take a peek at that real quick, and then we'll show you how to service this fluid. While we're on the topic of servicing rear differential fluid, I wanted to give you a little sneak peek here into one that's fully disassembled. We're doing some work on this, axle seals and things. I wanted to walk over a couple of the components we're trying to protect with this fluid and what it looks like internally. You can see in here we've got an empty axle housing. This is a solid rear axle on these Toyotas and a bunch of studs sticking out. That whole pumpkin will actually slide right in here. It's got all the gears and bearings and everything all loaded into it. And we just take that entire housing, we drop it in here, and we bolt it in place. Right through this hole back here is where we're going to fill and check our fluid, and then at the bottom is our drain. It's pretty straightforward servicing the fluid, as you can see, but there's a lot of components in here that take a lot of work in order to replace if they get damaged. So it's important you're checking your gear oil and you're replacing it from time to time. Let me show you another common area over here where there's a potential for leak. At the end of these axle tubes, there are seals that are in here and seals that are on the actual axle itself. So it's common for the seals that are in here to leak. You might see some oil come out and find them on the backing plates or find them on the brake shoes even. So if you're getting oil inside your brake shoes, it's probably coming from these seals. So this here is the axle, one of them out of this vehicle. It's got a new seal in it, and we've put some new parts on here. This is the reluctor wheel for the anti-lock brake system. There's a seal and a bearing inside of this, and you can see the backing plate is attached for the brakes, and we've had to remove the brakes and the wheel cylinder in order to access those components. This is quite a difficult job for a do-it-yourselfer at home. It requires a 20-ton shop press in order to press these components off and on. There's also some special pressing tools required in order to remove some of this stuff. You can do it without it. It takes a torch and some cutting wheels and some other things. So if this is a type of job, you've got a seal leaking on your Toyota like this, I'd recommend you take it to an auto shop and let them handle it, because it's a costly job. It's a difficult job, even for professionals. We struggle with these sometimes. The bearings get seized on them. They don't want to come off. Sometimes we have to end up cutting a lot of the parts off it. So we do have special tools, probably a large investment you wouldn't want to make just to replace the axle seals in your car. You could spend upwards of $1,000 just on the pressing jigs that we need, in addition to the press that you need in order to go ahead and remove and assemble these bearings. If you look over here, this is the pumpkin we talked about that sits up in the housing. It's got a big ring gear on it. The pinion gear is down in the bottom. There's a pinion seal on here that has a tendency to leak from time to time. You might have a leaking gasket here where the pumpkin mates to the axle housing. We've got some bearings inside and some specific adjustments that need to happen. So if you're not familiar with how to work on these, might not be the job for you. There are some accurate measurements that need to be made on this. So if you don't have the tools to accurately measure the backlash and the pinion depth and all those things, I recommend you probably don't touch it either. These jobs can get a little bit complicated, and if you don't set them up just right, you're going to have problems with noises, clunking, and premature wear. All right, at the back side of the rear differential is where we're going to have our check plug and fill plug. We're going to start the same way. I want to remove the fill plug first. There's a couple reasons I told you here before. I want to check the fluid level, check the fluid condition before we drain it. And it's always a good idea, especially if we live somewhere where it's a rusty climate. If you have an older vehicle that maybe this bolt's been stripped and rounded, you might have trouble getting it out. And if you drain all the oil before you check the fill plug, make sure you can actually put fluid back in it. You might have a little bit of a problem. I've seen this in the past where people have had to have their car towed into me. They tried to service their differential and they weren't able to get the fill plug out, so now they got no fluid in it and they have to have it towed to the shop to have me pop it out for them. So just be careful of that. Let's go ahead and pop this plug. This is a 24 millimeter socket on a 1/2 inch ratchet, so this is a pretty big bolt. All right, so you can see the fluid is coming out here. Now again, this vehicle's first service today with just about 30,000 miles, and you can see the fluid level is probably just a little bit higher than we really would want it to be. This vehicle is level on the rack. You always want to make sure your vehicle is level when you're doing these fluid services. And if I'm checking the fluid condition, it's a bit dirtier than it was up front. This vehicle is obviously not getting a ton of use in the four-wheel drive mode, but the rear is looking a little bit more like what I would expect to see with 30,000 miles. Let's go ahead and pull the drain plug on it now. The drain plug is located right here. And I can tell you guys, if you try to put a wrench on here, it's not going to work. You can see how this is here to protect the drain plug. So if you were to hit a rock or something, you don't want to knock the drain plug out or damage it. So Toyota's been nice. They put this little brace on here and it's welded in place so that it protects the drain plug, but that requires you to use a socket. You need something that fits inside of here, okay? So you want to make sure you get something in there. If you try to put a wrench on it, you're not going to get a good grip on it. You might strip it. Okay. Now that that's loose, we should be able to spin it out. Make sure you got your bucket in the right place here. Again, this is going to flow pretty quick. Move this a little bit closer this way. Well, let's hopefully get it all in the bucket. So here's our drain plug, just like the other one. It's got a magnet built into the drain plug and it looks different than the fill plug. It's not shiny, it's black. So you want to clean all that off. You can remove your gasket. and clean off all the metal material that might be on the magnet on the drain plug. I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of brake cleaner again, just spray off my plug, make sure the threads are clean, and I've got all the material off of that magnet. While that's draining, I'll install my new drain plug gasket. I'm also going to install my new drain plug gasket on my fill plug while I'm waiting for this fluid to drain. Same thing, I want to clean up this fill plug threads a little bit. Just make sure that everything's nice and clean before we reassemble. And now we'll just hang tight a minute till this comes to a slow drip again. Sometimes I like to take some new fluid. It depends how dirty the rear differential is or the front differential even, any of these services. If you want to flush a little through, if you've got extremely dirty fluid, it's not a bad idea just to go ahead and put some fluid in here and see if you can flush some of that old stuff out. A lot of that sediment will sit right here in the bottom, and if you can get some fluid moving through it with the drain plug out, you might remove some of that. You don't have to do it, but not a bad idea if you notice it's pretty dirty. All right, I've got this down to a slow drip now. We're just going to wipe off the mating surface here again on the rear differential. Again, if you're an off-road enthusiast, this will probably be full of mud and dirt. We don't want to push any of that back into the threads or anywhere. Got our new drain plug gasket installed. We should be able to thread this back in. We're just going to snug this for a moment. Stop the drip. I'll grab the torque wrench and we're going to tighten that to 36 foot-pounds. We're going to go ahead and torque this up to the 36 foot-pounds. There you have it. We're going to fill our tool back up now. This rear differential is supposed to take just about 6 quarts. So I'm going to make sure we have 6 quarts in here before we get started. I think I mentioned this before, but this takes the same oil as the front differential. It's a 75 W85 Toyota differential oil. I think it's LT 7585, and this is Motul synthetic version of that. Perfectly compatible with this vehicle. I prefer to use synthetic fluids whenever possible. So if you're changing your stuff for the first time and it didn't come with a synthetic oil, usually not a bad idea. Spend a couple extra bucks and put some better fluid in it. It's your vehicle, your investment. You want to keep it working as long as you can. Same fitting as the front. We'll just put this in the hole and we'll start pumping this tool. Get some pressure built up. Once we've got some pressure, I'm going to open my valve and I'll see if I can show you what this stream looks like here without making too much mess. Okay, so you see how slow it's kind of going. That's why this takes a little bit of time, but it's usually a lot easier than using a suction tool. Just more standing around and waiting than there is pumping and pushing and making a mess. All right, guys, it looks like we're pretty full. So now I'm just going to let this run a tiny bit. And I want to let you note here something different on the rear differential. Toyota wants you to let this thing on the ground, drive it, probably circulate some oil down. This oil will move across the bottom of the axle tube, so they want to make sure it's full after you've driven it. So when we're done with these services on here, we'll go ahead and road test it around the block, bring it back, get this differential on flat ground. You know, with it on the lift like this and the suspension's hanging down, it's possible this level won't be high enough right now, and that's probably why they want you to double check it also. So once we get done here, we'll just bring it back on flat ground, pop the plug, double check the level, make sure it's still full. Because we're going to check it again, I'm not going to let this drip in case I have to add some more fluid later. It's easier to drain it than fill it. I'm still going to torque this fill plug to 36 foot-pounds, even though we're going to pop it after we road test it, check it again. I always like to take just a tiny bit of brake cleaner and just clean up around the oil mess here, and the same thing on your drain plug. Just tidy it up a little bit so this doesn't look like it's leaking. Let's get into that transfer case. I know some of you guys might be thinking about when is the proper time to do this. We'll get into that at the end of the video. I'll let you know what Toyota's recommendations are and what my recommendations are. All right, the last four-wheel drive component that I want to service on this vehicle today is this transfer case here. This transfer case is electronically shifted. It'll have fluid inside it, transmission fluid. It takes a Toyota WS. You're going to see here I've got the check plug and the fill plug here, and the drain plug here. They're both labeled drain and fill. And they take a 3/8 drive, square drive, so we can just use the head of a 3/8 drive ratchet to remove these. Well, the same process applies here. Make sure you're fully inserted. And we're going to remove this little pipe plug here. We want to take that out first for the same reasons I mentioned before. We're going to check the level real quick, get a sample of the fluid, stick my pinky in here, and we can see there I've got some pink fluid. Like I mentioned, this does take Toyota WS fluid. Okay, let's go ahead and drain it. Now, I should mention before I get started, if you want to follow the instructions to a T, Toyota recommends removing this skid plate off the bottom of the transfer case. I'm not going to do that. It's got a cutout in it. You might get a little fluid bleed back here and drip in this cover. It's probably why they want you to take it off. We'll just try to be careful here. If you're really worried about it, you could always just take a rag, kind of stuff it in there, and that will just keep it from filling up inside of that little cover, okay? But I don't think it's going to go in there anyway. Let's go ahead and remove it, see what happens. Now, when you get it loose here, make sure your drain plug, make sure your drain pan is underneath and a little to the back of this plug or front, however you want to call it. This way it all goes in there, it'll come out fairly quickly. There you go. So you can see the condition of this fluid here. It is getting a little bit dirty. Not clean like brand new transmission fluid, but it's not terrible. It looks good. 30,000 miles. I want to point out here, this is the drain plug I removed. No magnet on this transfer case, so nothing to worry about on there. We'll still clean them up, but nothing to worry about as far as metal material to remove from there. We've got to put some Toyota WS transmission fluid in this transfer case. It holds about 2.2 quarts, just a little underneath that is what the specification is. I've taken our same tool and cleaned it out. We're going to make sure all the gear oil is out of there. And now we're just going to fill it. I'm going to put about 3 quarts of this WS fluid in here so I have plenty to fill this. I want to show you the color of this fluid. You see how nice and clean and red that is compared to what we took out of the vehicle. We'll install our pump back in our MightyVac tool. Snug it down. All right, the next step, clean up my drain plug here. We're going to put this back in. Now, this doesn't have any washer on there. There's nothing you need to do as far as replacing washers or cleaning them up. This is just sealing on the threads. It is possible that you might need a little bit of some kind of a Teflon tape or sealer on the threads. But my experience has been it's not a problem. If you torque it to the right spec, it's not going to leak. It's a pretty tight fit. Let's go ahead and torque that down. All right, guys. We're going to torque this down to 18 foot-pounds. That's the spec on these pipe plugs. Again, there's no gaskets, no drain plug, anything we need to worry about. Just make sure your threads are clean. And we're going to put the plug back in, torque it down. Now, it's really important to use a torque wrench on these, especially because if you over-tighten these pipe plugs, they have a tendency to crack the case on here. That's the last thing you want to do when you're just doing a service on here. It's the last thing you want to do ever, really. So if you crack this case, this whole transfer case has got to come apart, and the case is not cheap either. So make sure you're torquing these down. 18 foot-pounds is very light, and we should be good to go. I've got my torque wrench set here, and let's just bring it in nice and slow. Getting close. Okay, right there. And that's plenty tight enough. Now, it may not even feel tight to you, so this is why I'm telling you to be extra careful on these. You don't want to just keep tightening until it stops. It's not going to stop until you crack the case, okay? I've already cleaned out my filling machine here, got all the old fluid from when we did the rear differential. I also went ahead and put some pressure in here, and I pumped this up to bleed the rest of the gear oil that was in this hose out of here. I don't want to be putting gear oil on our transfer case. That's not what it calls for. So now that it's all bled out and we've got some pressure in the system, the tank is full, we're ready to start filling. So guys, I just wanted to remind you, we're fully accessible here. If you ever want to reach out to us, you can do so in the comments. You can reach us by email at the OrtoTech Garage at gmail.com. We'd love to hear your comments down below. Let us know what kind of services you're doing. Let us know how your experience goes if you're going to perform one of these services using our tutorial. We strive to have all the most accurate information and give you all the details that you need, plus add in my personal tips and experience. So if you're really liking this content, if this is helpful to you, we'd like to know about it. You can go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, make sure you ring the bell so you get notifications. We're trying to put out new content every week, every Thursday. If there's something you'd like to see, certainly let us know that as well. We're happy to make some new videos based on your recommendations. All right, guys, we've got it filled up. You can see it's starting to drain out. This is going to be the same as that front differential, rear differential. They want the fluid right at the bottom of the hole, not more than 5 millimeters below the bottom of the hole. So somewhere between 0 and 5 is usually the recommendation on there. We're going to let this drain out until it stops dripping. This way it's not any higher than the bottom of the hole. Again, sometimes it's helpful to just stick your finger in there. You can pump a little bit of that fluid back out of the hole, speed up the process a little bit. As soon as this thing is done, we'll go ahead and put that drain plug back in. Well, guys, nobody's perfect, but here's a good example why you follow the instructions. You can see my overflow is running into my cover and making a mess. So that's why Toyota tells you to take it out. All right, you can see I'm down to a slow drip now. I'm going to install the fill plug here. We're going to follow the same process. We'll torque that down to 18 foot-pounds, and then we'll just clean up the mess I made in that cover because I didn't follow the instructions. So if you do want to take this lower cover off, this protective shield, there are some 4 bolts on here, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. And I want to give you the torque specification for those as well, 20 foot-pounds. So if you decide not to make a mess like I did, that's the process. I'm going to clean this up a bit. I don't want any leaks for the customer in their driveway. All right, guys, I've road tested the vehicle, and I just want to double check this fluid level. Now that I've road tested, had a chance for this fluid to move around the entire axle back here. Let's see what it looks like. All right, nothing spilling out just yet. And if I check that fluid level, it's right there, just below the hole. I hope you can see that. So it's not spilling out like it was on the rack initially when we drained it, but we're right up there within 5 millimeters of the top. So we'll put this back in, get it torqued up, and this job will be complete. Now that we finished up the services on those 3 four-wheel drive components, drivetrain components, I wanted to talk a little bit about the intervals. When should you perform this service? Now, these recommendations can be all over the map depending on who you talk to. First thing I want to tell you about is what Toyota's recommendations are. They don't have any. So basically, you can go up through all their services up to 150,000 miles, and they still haven't recommended servicing the transmission or the transfer case or any of those things, differentials, which is kind of crazy to me. But I pulled up here their special conditions, special operating conditions, and here it shows if you're driving on dirty roads, dusty roads, if you're towing, if you're carrying heavy loads, if you're carrying a camper trailer on it. Basically, if you're working your vehicle like most of us do on a daily basis. And this is kind of where most vehicles, especially in city driving, I would think, you know, you're stop and go all the time, high temperatures, high asphalt temperatures in the summertime, all those types of things can contribute to fluid degradation over time. So, you know, if you're just driving around, highway driving, light load, not towing anything, nothing in the bed, you know, you could probably stretch your intervals a bit. But my recommendation, I'm a big believer in over-maintaining my vehicle. I know it sounds weird to say, but I don't let my oil changes go past 5,000 miles. I won't let these differentials go, you know, past 15 or even 30,000 miles at the most. Depends on what they look like. And the same thing with transmission fluid. I like to do it every 30,000 miles. If we're just doing a drain and fill on that, you're not getting all the fluid anyway. It's just a good idea, preventive-wise, to just change that fluid out once in a while. So I recommend all my clients, when they bring it in for their 30,000 mile service, which we do at those intervals, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150,000 miles, we usually change all the fluids. So we'll do both the differentials, transfer case, transmission, change their coolants. A vehicle like this has got a couple of them, 3 of them actually. The supercharger's got coolant, the hybrid system's got coolant, and then it's got the engine coolant. So we'll change those out, flush the brake fluid, all those things. So I'm a big believer, if you just take care of the maintenance on these Toyotas especially, they can go 1,000,000 miles. You can really get a ton of life out of them. If you don't maintain them, you can expect that lifetime to degrade rapidly, okay? So it's your choice how you want to service it. Again, my recommendation, at least every 30,000 miles on all the fluids. And I know here Toyota's recommending some of these differentials even earlier if you're using some of those special conditions. Okay. Another thing I should mention is they do tell you every time you service a vehicle to check for leaks and maybe check the fluid condition. So another example where, you know, they're not being 100% truthful. I guess if the condition of your fluid looks bad, then you're probably going to service it. You're not just going to leave it in there. It's not like check it and don't change it. It's check it. If it's dirty, change it. So use common sense when you're doing these things. You could see on this vehicle, the front differential was very clean. Probably didn't need a service, but we're at 30,000 miles. Why not do it? We upgraded it to some Motul synthetic oil, always better for the system. And we were doing the other stuff anyway, so why not just give it a full complement of fluids there for the four-wheel drive components. Appreciate you guys following along in this video. Hope some of this was helpful for you. Don't forget, we've got some more content for you over here. We're going to pop up a card for, we did the full oil change service on this vehicle months ago, and I recorded that. So if you want to check out that video, you can see that in our playlist. If you guys are liking our content, appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next video.